Boom, hello and welcome to the Executive Protection Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Byron Rodgers. This podcast is dedicated to the executive protection practitioner, the private security professional. In this podcast, we're going to talk about the mental, emotional, psychological, physiological fitness that goes into being an efficient and effective executive protection agent. Whether you're in law enforcement, whether you're a mom that's looking at how to protect her children, or a father that's focused on how to protect his family, I believe this podcast has something for all of you. We might even get into some tales from the crypts of true Hollywood stories from time to time. I'm doing this podcast because I feel the reality of this job is simple. If you really want to be good at executive protection, it's more than just a job. It really is a lifestyle. And those of you who've been in the game for any serious amount of time, you already know what I'm saying is true. So if that sounds interesting to you, enjoy the show. Out. Boom. Hey, what's going on, y'all? Byron Rodgers here, hanging for another episode of the Executive Protection Lifestyle Podcast. And I got buddy Gilbert here hanging with us today. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Dude, I'm glad to have you on. It's an honor. It is an honor. Our paths crossed, I feel like our paths crossed briefly, way back in the day. We were like two ships passing in the night, you know? Yep. And I had no idea who you are or what you've done at that point, when I first started hearing about you. But it's good to hear that you've done so much for the industry, just in general.
It's been a fun ride for sure.
Heck sure, yeah, man. No, that's what's up. And a lot of people that I really respect you too. So it's like, okay, there's a no-brainer, man. I gotta eventually, when the time is right, we gotta catch back up and see if I can get him on the show, man. So I'm glad this is happening for
Definitely.
Sure. So as we jump right into it, my man, it's funny because I ask all these questions, but these first couple of personal questions tend to be the most kind of interesting or even sometimes hard for people to answer, but who would you say you are at your core?
At my core, as corny as it sounds to say a protector. Yeah. Really, from an early age, I had the protective instincts, growing up, in a tough neighborhood, tough environment. I always had the urge to protect, those around me. And I can think of a story when I think I was 8 years old in this high school where I was messing with my brother who was, 18 months older than me. And he was playing a prank on him. And the prank ended up with this high schooler smashing an egg over the back of my brother's head. And all of his buddies just started. Oh, heck no. I walked across the alley, picked up a 2x4 and smacked him upside the head. You don't mess with my brother, Yeah, man. Heck yeah. And that's me at an early age, the earliest I can remember, of the foundations of who I was, who I started as. And that has definitely evolved over the years, with the different iterations and seasons in life and seasons in the industry. And all that has developed and grown from a 2x4.
From a 2x4. I love that. It's like, yeah, man. It's like that Tupac poem, The Rose That Growed from Concrete. But
so true.
I find that interesting, man, that a whole career, a whole lifestyle, so much can grow out of this urge that so much of us have at such a young age. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we, with all the guys I talk to, a lot of the guys at the top of the game and that are really, really doing a lot for the industry, I hear the same thing. They're like, bruh, back in grade school, I just, this is just who I am. It's what I do. It's, it's always been more than a job. And then for a lot of us, as we kind of evolve into these positions and end up having to deal with the full spectrum of the client offering that we do have in the industry, I feel like having a deep-seated urge to be a protector kind of helps just keep you grounded amongst all the different directions things can go,
Definitely. It's saying that it's a lifestyle, not a job.
Yeah.
A lot of people say that, but I don't know if people really grasp the full understanding of how that really impacts the day-to-day, ops, especially as you've been in the industry for a while, you find out whether or not it is a lifestyle for you and whether you can hang with it.
Yeah, that's the truth, man. Because when you're sitting at the table and talking with dudes who've been in this game, like, I mean, we're just beginning this interview, but like, you know, as well as I do, our lives revolve around what we do. And if it wasn't us organically, like, this is the type of man I am anyway, there'd be a lot of friction, man.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
A lot, man. That's funny.
Yep.
That's good to go, man. I dig that. So how'd you get into the game? How'd you get into private security and all that fun stuff?
Well, first security gig I worked was when I was part of a search and rescue team in 1996. Parking lot security, just watching cars for people at an event. And that was my first foray into security. About as boring of an 18-hour day as I would ever get. Yeah. But that's where I, remembered it. And it was actually at that event that I had a conversation with another of the guys that was on the search and rescue team with me. And he was talking about, the school in Aspen, Colorado, ESI, where, everybody goes and they learn all these skills and how they get to go live this exciting lifestyle, And for me, a guy who quit school at 13 because, my family, couldn't afford the socks that I wanted to buy. I was 11 years old. I wanted to buy Nike socks. And
Nike socks. Yeah.
My family couldn't afford it. So I decided to go out and start working. And so I started my own business. And that urge to move forward, from coming from nothing, if you will, really is what grew into my desire to pursue. When he mentioned, executive protection, I was like, wow, that's interesting.
That's awesome, man. And were you doing this search and rescue mission or job out of necessity, making money, and then something about you kind of hooked?
That was a training opportunity. So we did search and rescue training and land search and rescue, air search and rescue, and then actually went to Miami and interned with National Academy of Police Divers doing underwater search and recovery. And it was actually there that I met the first EP agents that I had ever met, because we were doing PT one morning and out in a park, and there were these guys that worked at corporate detail there in Miami, and they started talking about the lifestyle. And I had always been interested in military or law enforcement. Yeah. But it never quite clicked for me as far as that was the direction I wanted to pursue. And and these corporate EP guys were talking about, travel and, firearms training. And I was like, wow, this sounds amazing. And that's really when I started to pursue ESI. And at the time, ESI was this distant goal that, I'd never be able to afford in my lifetime. Yeah. And it took me a solid 5 years before I could get there, but I made it.
What would you say about ESI training? Like, I would love to do something, train with them, understand their way, what would you say about them? What was it like going to their school? I imagine you did all that.
Yep. ESI for me was transformational. I mean, it took a kid from Washington State that had no bearing of what EP was or what the lifestyle was like. I had, these images in my mind that you see in the movies, and that was it. It took that, and it started to develop an understanding of what it would take for me to develop the skills that I would need over the course of my career. And I think that's an important understanding for any EP school, coming from an instructor perspective, a student perspective, understanding that you're not necessarily going to learn everything from any single EP school. Right. But it's going to give you a vision of where you can develop and grow, and that foundation that you can build from, It's the platform that launched my career, and I'll always be grateful, to Bob and Fonda and the entire cadre of instructors who helped me launch into a career that is taking me some crazy places.
Heck yeah, man! And that's I really appreciate hearing you say that, because I currently
or recently went through, I've gone through a few like schools, and I recently went through with EPI, and I think one of the major things that I was thinking the whole time was like, yo, is this going to be relevant? Like, you know what I mean? Like, because one of them I went through and I was like, some of that was relevant, but I wouldn't, if I hadn't had experience, I wouldn't be walking away from this experience of training with an accurate understanding of what it's going to take to be successful in the EP industry. You know what I mean? Maybe a State Department detail or something like this, but how relevant, you know what I mean? So I'm glad to hear you say that about EPI, man, you know?
Yeah, it really, you know, a lot of people, when it comes to schools, it used to be that you had ESI on the West Coast, EPI on the East Coast, you know, never the two shall meet, you know, and then there was this rivalry between, you know, NLA and ESI Alumni Association type of
deal.
And I have close buddies on both spectrums, and you know, respect the living daylights out of everybody.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. And a lot of people like to bring the haterade about different schools. You know, oh, this school's better than this school. You know,
it's like jiu-jitsu versus Muay Thai or something. It's
exactly,
like, guys,
exactly,
do your thing, study it all. You know,
and they're so focused on the rivalry.
Yeah,
one of the core principles that has guided me throughout my career is try to learn something new from someone every single day. And
yeah, right.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, no, exactly. It doesn't matter if that's the janitor. It doesn't matter if that's the DL. It doesn't matter if that's the principal. Right. We are in amazing places with amazing people. And if you're going to EP school and you're like, oh, this EP school is better than this EP school, you're missing
the whole thing.
The opportunity. Because I'll guarantee you there were nuggets that if you're focused on, oh, my school's better than your school, you're not picking up those nuggets.
Right.
And really, that is the difference between gleaning the useful principles that can make the difference of success and failure on a future detail that I think a lot of people underestimate.
Nah, 100%, bro. You said it perfectly. I'm the same way, man. Like, the cup is always at least half empty. I'm here to learn anything I can. I'm the same way, man. And like the rivalries, it's like, because so I posted something. This will crack you. So I posted like a picture of me there at EPI, and I got like 4 other videos of ESI all over my like executive lifestyle thing. I was like, whoa! Like I was like, I hit a pain point. Like I tap into something. I was just saying, man, I'm trying to get some training. We're doing some cool things. It's tight, you know.
Exactly.
And I noticed really quick that haterade you were talking about. I was like, right? It's a real thing. All right, whatever.
Well, and it boils down to one of the core things that you see in the industry time and time again is people like what they know. They understand where they came from, and a lot of people let that dictate where they're going, how they operate in the future. You know, where I think that there's value in saying, this is where I came from. I learned from this school. I learned from this school. I'm going to take the information that I learned from both of them, combine them together, and then move forward. Because protection today, especially coming from a guy like me, to where this is all I've ever done in my adult life. You know, protection 20 years ago was not what it was 10 years ago, was not what it was 5 years ago.
And it's growing.
Anybody that goes to Silicon Valley today knows that it's certainly not what it's going to be tomorrow. It is evolving. It's rapidly changing. And unless we're gleaning the skills that we need to develop into the agents of tomorrow, you're falling behind the guy next to you.
Yeah, you really legitimately are. That's so the game, man. Like now this thing's evolving quickly. The world, even the enemies are evolving quickly.
Yep.
The whole technological threats are evolving quickly. Man, they showed us a case where an aggressor used the reflections in the eyes of a celebrity that he was stalking to figure out where she was and make moves on her and, you know, and cause a problem and breach security. Right. And I believe he sexually assaulted her.
And who would have guessed? Right.
Yeah, man. That's a security breach. Like, what is going on? Yeah, so the game is changing. I guess we say all this to say, don't get cemented in some doctrine, dogma, or anything. You know, absorb what's useful, disregard what's useless, add what's essentially your own. And at the end of the day, try to be the type of guy that can kill your clone. Tom Kyer dropped this on me, man. It's been going. I haven't been able to. It's like my favorite saying of the month. I asked him. I was like, "What somewhere in the interview, I was asked him like, so what's kind of your thing? And he's like, at the end of the day, I want to be a little bit smarter, stronger, something. And I want to be able to say I could kill my clone. If my clone from yesterday came at me, I need to be able to deal with them. And I was like, this is good. This is
solid.
Good. So, heck yeah, man. I'm glad we got to touch on that. That's what's up. Okay, so you got into protection, you got into that gig, and then that got you hyped on the industry, and then you eventually made your way into EPI, and the rest is history, or
ESI. Yeah, ESI.
Sorry.
Yep.
The rest is history.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, from there, for the next 7 years, I didn't say no to a single detail. I moved wherever I had to move. I worked for $8 an hour. I worked for $75 an hour. The full spectrum. I would work for 36 hours straight. Didn't matter what the gig was. Started out guarding dumpsters and evolved over the years to guarding the people that put the trash in those dumpsters.
Yep.
And I mean, literally, one of my first
companies
in Hollywood was guarding the dumpster at the back of a wedding of a very well-known celebrity. Yeah. And they wanted to make sure that there was no sensitive information that the paparazzi could glean from that trash. And I was like, what kind of a nonsense gig is this? I'm getting paid to stand, whatever, I'll do it,
Yeah.
And that started it, but they knew that they could count on me for that post, and that evolved later on into, bigger and better things.
An opportunity, man. I that's one of the themes we see. People are always hitting me up. Yo, how do I get in the industry? And I'm like, bruh, go find all the local security companies around you. Go on. Now there's these big companies that you can get on with, AS Solutions and all these different ones, and apply for everything. Try to get feedback as to why you weren't picked. And if you got your local security companies, get on and work everything and prove to them that they can count on you. And when they get a shot, they're going to give it to you, or you'll work your way up to the higher quality stuff they got,
Oh, exactly. Realizing that it's not about us, right? When I was looking to try to break into the industry, none of my conversations with any of the decision makers centered around me. I'd answer their questions, but I would ask them questions, pointed questions, as far as what do you need? What do you need from a person to fill this position? And that allowed me to shape my performance based on what they wanted. And if you're feeling the need of a guy who's scrambling to fill a detail, then why wouldn't they want to give you bigger and better things?
Heck yeah. You start making plays for them, man, they're going to put you in,
Exactly. Be dependable.
Yeah. No, that's it, man. I've seen some guys I didn't even think were marketable that I couldn't even I got some guys a shot and I was like, I don't know if he's going to make it, but he said yes to everything. And then, next thing you know, I got a guy right now I'm sitting there thinking of, I'm like, man, is he marketable? But he's such a hard worker, humble and dependable. Done. He's doing good, so I love it.
And I have people nonstop telling me, you're never going to make it. You don't have any military experience. You don't have any law enforcement experience. And this is all, right pre 9/11, 9/11, right after, in those years kind of, where it was very heavy, especially in the LA scene. Everybody was law enforcement because that's what you had to do to get your CCW, and that was the golden ticket. That was what everybody wanted, and I said, all right, well, I know what I'm not, but I'm going to focus on filling the needs that I can with whom I am, Exactly. And rather than letting it hold me back, which it very well could have, because it held back a lot of my buddies who tried, but focusing on what you can do, what needs you can fill for the DL client, whomever, is key, is clutch.
It's like that Equalizer quote. You got to be who you are in this world, man. You got to, and that's 100% correct, man. That's good advice. Even for me, that's always been kind of my thing. Like, you see somebody else. The problem is you see other people do it. You see that military guy or that cop guy, and you're like, wow, and then you get sucked into like trying to be them, but you're not them. So it's inauthentic and it's not powerful. And it's kind of like people are like, ew, like stop that. And it's really just uncharismatic and attractive. And if you're just like, yo, this is me, I'm this, and I can, and I'll give you my best, and I'll do my best from this spot, then, it's just more powerful. It's more authentic. It goes farther. And people are natural psychologists, so they feel that. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Intuition is a crazy thing.
Yeah, man. So then tactical background, brother. I love this part. What's your tactical background?
I have no tactical background.
Yes, that's exactly. That's beautiful, man. Because I have people hit me with the same thing. They're like, yo, like, can I do this? Like, I'm not a police officer or military. I'm like, bro, like, the dude that brought me into this whole thing was a civilian. Like, a lot of the best dudes I've ever worked with were just civilians. Now, this means you have less ego and like less things you think you know to get over in order to just do a good job at the customer service and all the other things that are required, But anyways, what would you say about your background, man? Go ahead.
Yeah, the amazing thing about the industry as a whole is it is evolving, right?
Yeah.
And with that evolution, it creates opportunities that have never been seen before. The traditional need for people who used to do something who are now in the industry, used to be FBI, used to be State Department, and now they're in EP. That need is always going to be there, right? Because those are legitimate skills, legitimate backgrounds that are well respected and needed, But especially with Silicon Valley and a lot of different principles, the needs to have a different viewpoint also exists, and a lot of people with the tactical backgrounds like you're talking about that are able to evolve into the private sector from their previous industries.
Yeah.
Super useful, super, big asset to the industry. Some people just can't make that transition. They're so used to doing what they used to do that they try to fit a, round peg into a square hole. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't,
Right.
To where my background is the industry. My background is adapting and mitigating risk based on the current environment. That environment might be high risk, it might be low risk, it might be, perceived no risk, but mitigating whatever it might be and providing value to the protectee or the organization, depending on who your target is. That is what I think has been kind of a staple of my input to the industry, because I'm always looking to be useful. I'm always looking to be relevant, because I've seen the life cycle of security in the industry to where 9/11 happens, everybody, reacts. They spin up a big team. Nothing happens for a while.
And then
take a look at it and they say, hey, we're spending way too much money on this. And then they cut everybody on the team and everybody's out of a job, right?
Yeah, right.
And I'd rather take a look at it and I'd rather say, all right, we know that the life cycle of security happens, right? So let's take a look and figure out what is the goal. And this is what developed my three, principles that I lived by for a long time.
Okay.
But identify the expectation, right? What is it that the organization or the principal needs, right?
Okay.
And that has to be a brutally honest conversation with the protectee, with the DL, whoever the decision maker is. Identify what it is that is expected of you.
Okay.
And that is the number one reason why I've seen details fail over the last years, is because they didn't effectively identify what it is that is expected of them.
That's
the
savage.
That I always try to do.
I'm taking notes. That's all this is, right?
Perfect. Is document the expectation, right? Everything can get lost in translation. The telephone game is prevalent in the industry. The principal tells the CSO tells the detail leader, the detail leader tells the agents, and all of a sudden the agents are doing something that's not in line with what the principal wants, right?
Over here now. Yeah.
Exactly. So being able to align the expectations of the principal with the documented expectations for those who will actually be doing the work, having that alignment is clutch.
And then, or maybe the principal didn't identify it properly. So like a year or 6 months later, they're like, why are these guys doing this? And you're like, well, sir, man.
Exactly.
This is our understanding. We wrote it down right here, and they're like, let me modify this. Things have changed. And you're like, I would love for that for you.
Exactly. We are the subject matter experts in EP, not the principal, right? We shouldn't be bringing them questions. We should be bringing them solutions. And so identifying what they want and how that will translate to actual day-to-day on the ground ops is something that far too many people overlook, and they assume, oh, the principal wants what I have. Well, it might not be the case. You can't always get a full written SOP for every details, especially ad hoc details, especially, spin up details. But working to align those two is huge,
That is huge, man.
And then when it comes to long-term details, especially, number 3 is enforce those expectations. So, walk softly but carry a big stick is one of the sayings that my client always used to say. I forget MacArthur or somebody that originally said it, but
one of the OGs said it first. But yeah.
Exactly. and having that enforcement mechanism in place to make sure that the people on the ground know that this is the expectation. These are the ramifications if the expectations are not met, is actually a big area that I failed in my early management days, was not having that expectation of this will be enforced. This is the expectation. This will be enforced because this is what the principal wants, And then what that does is that eliminates the middleman, right?
Ambiguity and all the
Exactly.
gray trash.
Exactly. Because we have enough ambiguity. We have enough gray area in day-to-day ops, right?
Yeah.
You have a plan. Absolutely. The plan is going to change. But working to actually have at least the core guidelines that those in the field can follow is tremendously important, from my opinion.
That's awesome advice. That advice is like, dudes better be taking. Hey, if you're listening to this, that right there. Oh man, like there's an example of this that dudes do that's in my head, but like I forget where in psychology this is, but it's man. You identify that expectation. Like, shut your mouth until you know what somebody wants. Like if you don't know what they want, you don't have like a case to build. You have nothing, So this whole I'm the professional. They want what I have. Honestly, man, I've seen it cost people millions of dollars in details. Like I've literally watched service providers like come incorrect to clients for extended periods of time and lose the account. And I'm sitting there like, hey man, like, like they just don't want to do it this way. And they're like, nah, like we got to make sure, and then I've seen people lose a lot. And then this whole document that document expectation is like ultra important for so many reasons, but it protects the agents and it protects the clients. And it gives you straight lines, you know what I'm saying? And then the enforce the expectation, man, I think that really probably contributes heavily to unit cohesion because it's is the standard.
Plus, it gives them that confidence that what they're doing is meeting the client's expectations.
Yep.
So what I've found is having that enforcement mechanism in place prevents it from needing to be used, which
otherwise you have the ambiguity. And then dudes are messing up and the client's like, yo, how come you dudes over here doing this weirdness? And then you got to like you're always like trying to keep them in the, you know what I mean?
Herd the cattle or herd the sheep or whatever.
Yeah, man. I'm digging this stuff, man. This is good trash. We're gonna have to I'm up. This is up in my game a little bit, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You're articulating the things that need to make sure and be done. I love it. So what are you up to these days, my man? Where you at? And what are you up to these days, Caleb?
Yeah, so I'm been at PayPal for
you can talk about
over 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, head of security for the CEO of PayPal. Woo. So I've been working with the team to develop and this has been my first formal corporate experience. So it's been an amazing opportunity to learn from some very skilled professionals, skilled in the corporate environment. It's a completely different game.
Different animal.
Oh, definitely. And it's been great to be able to learn and grow as a professional, as a person, but also, to just be able to watch the corporate machine work and see how the different, pieces fit together. I spent a long portion of my career in the family offices with ultra high net worth individuals, and that was a completely different beast, than the corporate end of things. Yeah. And then both were different from the celebrity end of things that I started my career with, so very different slices of the pie that, with IPSB identified the 5 different slices of the, of the protection pie or whatnot. And I'd really never taken a look at it and looked at the distinct differences. But that's one of the big things that makes me grateful for the IPSP, is because they really put it out there that there are relevant skill sets between the different slices of the protection pie.
Okay.
But there are very real skills that you need to learn for each and every one
of those slices of that pie.
Yeah.
Yes. Yo, just off the top of your head, do you know those 5 slices?
So,
by chance, I could bumble through them, but you know what I mean? Like, what do we got, man? We got like
celebrity, high threat,
okay,
celebrity, corporate, family office, and then the 5th one is the religious figures.
Yeah,
church security and everything like that.
Good to go.
And I'm pretty sure that's the current relevant one. But it's amazing to see that, you know, obviously the protection thread runs right through the middle of the pie and it touches on each of the 5 slices.
Mm-hmm.
But what I like is taking a look at you know, what it takes to be successful, what it took for me to be successful as a practitioner in the celebrity realm was far different than it was in the family office realm, right?
Yes.
Family office realm is completely different as far as needs, structure. You know, obviously there's threats and they fluctuate over time, but what is needed to be successful in those is different from the corporate environment. Corporate environment presents unique challenges just because there's, you know, governance and risk and all the different players. Have to learn to work together with the players and still be able to put a functional product together for the principal and, obviously staying relevant.
Right. Like there's seriously something for everybody. Like, I just feel like people they hear, they see, they're like, yeah, executive protection. And then like are thinking about celebrities. I'm like, guys, this is like it's a very our field is so vast. There's so much here, you know, there's so many compartments, you know, so many approaches, you know, and there's no like right or wrong. It's more like what's appropriate for the situation dictates tactics, you know? So, you know,
definitely.
I like to expose it like, hey man, there's a lot more out there than just rolling with a celebrity. There's a lot more out there, you know, and you got to be into like the celebrity thing takes a certain type of person who's into that and down to do that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And the religious figure
what you're good at.
Yeah, exactly. And then working for a religious figure. This is also another one. Like it takes a certain type of person. You need to understand the dynamics and the politics and all these things actually relative to all these corporate, same thing. You got to understand the social dynamics and the moves to survive. Otherwise, you're tripping, falling it up in HR's office.
Yep. No, exactly.
I dig it, man. So CoPro. What would you say about CoPro if you were going to give someone like an introduction to it?
I think CoPro is the most misunderstood style and protection in the industry.
Okay.
I honestly do.
Okay, I dig that. Because I know it's like cool right now. It's like ninja.
Oh, for sure. It is. And it is, over the last 10 years, it has been such a major part of my life. You know, I first started, working low pro details, in 2008, 2009, when I was on the East Coast.
Okay.
And working low pro, was super difficult, and it started my thought process of trying to develop a better way of actually being able to mitigate the threat.
Okay.
But not being the elephant in the room, right? Then 2010, I moved to back to West Coast. I was started in the Silicon Valley, and went to Ivor's SD course, and just completely fell in love with the SD concept. Just took and started absorbing it, and then implementing it in daily ops. Soon after that, I transitioned, became the client, if you will, and was tasked with taking and finding a better way to provide protection for the principal without impacting their Silicon Valley lifestyle. And so I took and I presented this slideshow to my CSO at the time, and he saw the slideshow and he said, "All right, make a decision. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, make a decision right now. Do you want to keep being detail leader and doing what you're doing, or do you want to take this and run with it? And I was like, well, I'm just presenting this as a proof of concept. I wasn't aiming to quit my job.
He's like, hey, Marines are dying. You got to make a decision.
Yep, exactly. And,
okay.
And so I took that original presentation. I said, all right, let's do it. And from that moment on, my life was engrossed in figuring out a way to provide executive protection that was not your traditional model. And it was an amazing journey with amazing partners. Worked closely with Ivor to take the SD concepts, evolve it into the what eventually we called CoPro, and really take and make it a usable and sustainable concept. When I first started looking for other examples, I couldn't find anybody in the U.S. that was, doing it full time, and Christian West and AS Solution had been, doing this on different details in Europe and working on having the, low pro and the covert protection style, but nobody had taken it from the client's perspective and made it sustainable for day in, day out ops. One person details are a lot different than having a full team of CoPro. And I quickly found that out. And so I began conversations with everybody that would listen or talk to me, and it was very difficult.
What would you say? Is it possible to do CoPro with 1 or 2 man details? Interrogative.
All right. So
break it down for you, boy. I'm saying I've been wondering about how this could work.
Essentially, think of CoPro as a combination of skills, right?
And real quick, CoPro, covert protection.
Covert protection, yeah.
Just for all y'all out there, we're not that cool. That's what it means.
We called it protective surveillance in the early years because my CSO came and said, hey, what do you want to call it? And I was like, well, covert protection sounds cool, but it sounds too tactical. We're in Silicon Valley. We try to make everything more palatable, Yeah, absolutely. And we started calling it protective surveillance. But we found the word protective surveillance, or the title, really makes everybody focus on the surveillance piece and not the protection.
Right.
And so the difference between, CoPro and the other styles of protection really boils down to being able to respond and mitigate a threat without looking like that's what you're doing. Okay. We're not trying to hide, right? We're trying to be the ghost in the corner all the time. We're trying to take and be in a position to where we look like a normal part of the protectee's environment, but we're close enough to actually be able to mitigate the threat. And that was the piece of the puzzle that was extremely difficult because people, especially me, coming from the celebrity environment, I was used to being on body with the principal, being close enough to where something happened, we were able to reach out and touch somebody, right? Yep. Respond and get
that AT&T going. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And we found out quickly when we were running, field training scenarios that anytime we'd have an AOP, attack on principal drill, in the early days, we weren't able to mitigate the threat. And so what we started to do was focus on what I call the Copra Bubble. And that is focus on the area around the principal, insulating that area rather than just insulating the principal. So that Copra Bubble, we have our traditional circles of security. But why I like to call it a bubble is because that bubble will expand and contract based on the nature of the threat, based on the proximity of the principal to potential threats. Obviously, it's going to change with your threat environment. There's so many variables, but it's a bubble that expands, it contracts, and it's a dynamic style of protection that requires the agents to think 2 or 3 steps ahead of the principal. Because you think with traditional executive protection, I'm able to talk to my principal and say, where are you going? What are you doing? How are you going to get there? Because I'm facilitating those logistics, right?
All the moves, yeah.
CoPro, you don't necessarily have that communication with the principal. So you have to insulate the area around them. And sometimes if they're safe, you can back off as far as is appropriate. But if there's potential risk, you have to constrict down and be closer than might necessarily be comfortable. But if you don't constantly adjust it, you're not doing CoPro. You're not being effective. You're not effectively mitigating the threat of the principal.
So you can lose your kind of relevance, not relevance, but you can lose your tactical like potency if you're not adjusting. You have to be taking that feedback from your environment. You have to be adjusting relative to those factors of threat level and the unknowns that are in that space and things like this. So
adapting and predicting. I know we can't predict the client's movements, but understanding a principal's lifestyle is how we're able to adjust and mitigate the threats based on our understanding. So they're going to change their mind all the time. They're going to change where they're going.
Oh, yeah.
But better we know the principal, the more we know about them, the more we can anticipate, right? So if we know, for instance, that oftentimes they like to work out, we can anticipate that and build that into the probabilities of where they will likely go next.
Okay.
Now, obviously, having a direct line of communications with the principal is ideal, you know. And originally, when I designed the team, it was designed to be work in conjunction with the traditional EP team. It's effective in both styles, if you will.
Okay.
But by and large, it is much more effective if you can actually have somebody, an overt EP agent on body with the principal. You know,
like rolling with them.
Exactly, feeding the information to the CoPro team, because then you have the best of both worlds. You know.
Yeah.
Then you're able to mitigate the threat, but you have the early warning system of CoPro, knowing if anything enters the environment around them.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like a concern or, okay. I dig it, man. That's interesting. Strengths and weaknesses of the model.
So CoPro's biggest weakness, obviously, is you don't have that direct line of communication with the principal. So oftentimes you can have the tendency of being too far away to mitigate a threat.
Okay.
The strengths is we're able to effectively mitigate risk while facilitating the principal's lifestyle. So they're able to live their lifestyle, do their thing. We're not asking them to change anything about what they do. We are 100% adapting to their lifestyle. And all of the principals that I've worked and discussed this with and consulted with on different teams have loved it. They've loved it because they want to do their thing. You know, oftentimes principals, especially Silicon Valley, where I've been for a long time, they want to live their lifestyle. They want to do their thing, and they don't want security to tell them what to do.
Right.
So risk acceptance becomes a significant part of what we have to do is select, all right, where will the risk most likely come from? We're not necessarily going to be able to mitigate all the risk.
Never.
And we have to be honest with them. Again, in that identify the expectations. We have to be honest with them and say, all right, you make that decision to, go to that location. I can't guarantee you that we're going to keep you safe. But
and that's always the case, even with somebody on body. It's like we still can't mitigate all the risk, we can do the best we can. Yeah.
Precisely. But finding that fine line, between risk mitigation, risk acceptance is key. But it also, raises the stakes for your RTVAs and identifying where your actual risk is coming from. Because if you have an accurate risk, threat, and vulnerability assessment that is constantly updated, based on the changing lifestyles and
visibility of the client.
Exactly. Then you're able to focus on the areas that are higher risk to them or that you can actually mitigate, So having that ability to dynamically shift with the changing nomenclature of the client's lifestyle is key to CoPro, and that's the biggest area that people have messed up when they've tried to develop a CoPro team.
Very interesting, man. Very interesting stuff. Now, do clients generally, well, I guess it's probably client dependent, but do you guys execute this program without the client knowing who all's on the team? Or is it one of those things where it's like, my guy's in the corner of the gym pretending like he's doing abs, or like my guy's in the corner of the ice cream shop, like, or is it like the client really just doesn't know who's who in the zoo and he's just like kind of going about his life and he's got like one guy on the EP team that he like has a direct line? How do you work that?
Yeah. That's the beautiful thing about CoPro is it is scalable. It is adaptable. You can take whatever the client's risk is, whatever the client's desires are, you can adjust accordingly, right? So if you're working in an environment to where the client doesn't want to know who the protection team are, you can take and deploy, assets accordingly, and the client knows they're there, they know they're around, but they don't necessarily know who they are, right? As long as the line of communication with the principal is ensuring that is the expectation of the principal.
Okay, we're back.
Then circles right back to the three principles. Knowing what their expectation is will dictate how we deploy those resources. And the scalability of CoPro is one of its biggest strengths because I manage a large team. I've seen teams that are now developing to even larger scales than even I managed before. And I've seen it up in a small team environment as well. And the biggest key to remember is, what is the principal's expectation? How can you meet that expectation with what you have? Because the budgets for CoPro can be astronomical. It can be an incredibly expensive proposition.
Okay.
But you can also scale it if the client is willing to accept risk and they just want somebody to watch their back when they go to coffee in the morning. Then it's a far more palatable, price structure. That's all going to be dependent on whoever the decision maker is and how they're able to structure that conversation with the protectee.
Okay, solid. I dig it. What would you say about, we're talking about providing solutions before the client knows exactly what the problems are. We had something in here about providing solutions to clients.
Definitely.
Yeah, what was that about, man?
So all of your clients are good at what they do, right?
Okay.
They are the best version of them. Most likely your protectee, I mean, I know of a couple anomalies, but in general, your protectee is not a protector, right? So they understand what they're facing. They understand their world. So the more we can take and understand their world, their environment, their likes, their dislikes, their lifestyles, the more we can understand that, the more we can take and shape a custom program around their lifestyle that facilitates their lifestyle, but insulates them from the risks that they might not even know exist, right?
So good, bro.
That bubble around the principle is key. And identifying and mentioning things to them. I've had conversations with my principals in the past where I've talked to them and said, hey, just so you know, there is this risk from this that you might, want to consider mitigating. If you want to, we can do this, this, and this. You don't even have to worry about it,
We'll bring the coffee to the room. Yeah, I'm saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be, identify the risk, but also bring with it a way to mitigate or accept that risk, and being fine with that is also key. A lot of people try and force it on the principal. And at the end of the day, if the principal wants to do something, they're going to do it. And it is what it is. All we can do is inform them, be a resource for solutions for them, and then insulate them the best we can.
Yeah, 100%, man. No, that's solid game. Understanding their lifestyle, understanding the stuff they're going to do, because they all have non-negotiables too. Like, yo, I'm getting my coffee from my favorite coffee place. This is what's going to, we're going in here. You come with me or you're not going in here, So how can we facilitate these things in a safer manner and solve these problems before the client even is really going to put themselves in that harm's way to get there and get it done? I love it, man.
Right.
That's a solid game. I think another thing that is kind of relevant for us to hit on is the Silicon Valley life, man. Like, I've had some guys that go down there, they work, and it seems like it's a different beast. I personally don't know anything about it. You know, what would you say the culture is like down there with regards to EP? What's the game like down there, man?
The culture of EP life in Silicon Valley is being 100% adaptable, because with innovation comes change.
Right.
Silicon Valley is the center of innovation of the world, right? They're constantly looking for ways to do things better, to do things more efficient, to be a better version of whatever it is that they're making money off of, you know? With that understanding of what the clients are like, we have to shape our lifestyle, our expectations, our, you know, protection plans to that lifestyle, right? We can't just say, this is how protection is done. This is how we're going to do it for you, because they'll say, okay, good meeting you. Cool. See you later.
We'll find we can do it the way we want it. Have a nice day.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yep. You know, it's like when I moved to Hollywood, you know, I was 160 pounds soaking wet in the shower. Right.
Okay.
Got to Hollywood and everybody's like, Caleb, I like you, but you're too small, man.
Yeah, this happened to me too.
10 years I bodybuilt, right?
Yeah. Same thing happened to me, bro. I'm like, I'm fine. Like, leave me alone, man.
I know, right?
I just got the Marine Corps. I'll throw you over my shoulder. We'll run a few miles and we'll see the heck.
Exactly.
I was like, leave me alone. They're like, yeah, but you need to gain like 20 pounds. I'm like, all right. Fine.
Exactly. So I bodybuilt 10 years. You know, I got up to 75. I was big, right?
Yeah.
Then I moved to Silicon Valley and they're like, Caleb, I like you, but you're too big. You know, you're scaring everybody, right?
Right? Smile, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Smile. Don't be so, you know, aggressive looking, you know, and that is a perfect example of, you know, I'm not going to go lose a bunch of weight just because the principal, you know, tells me to.
Right.
But at the same time, there's ways that I can change my wardrobe, change my, you know, appearance, change how I
play the game.
Exactly. Just so that I'm not making anybody feel uncomfortable, you know, and especially in the corporate environment where I'm at right now, you know, some people, when they're being honest with me, they're like, oh, you're around. Should I be scared? And my common answer is, I'm around. So you should feel safe, you know?
Exactly.
And it becomes a little joke, but culturally, from an EP's perspective in Silicon Valley, we have to make them feel good about having us around. Make them associate our presence with peace of mind, rather than you know, oh, these guys are around. The ninjas must be jumping out of the helicopters now. Yeah, exactly. Because especially with incidents, you know, like San Bruno and different incidents that have happened in recent years, people are scared. People want their risks mitigated, and they're more security friendly, in my opinion, than they've ever been.
Yeah.
EP in the Silicon Valley has grown exponentially over the last 5 years.
Yeah,
it is crazy
right now.
There are so many opportunities, and anybody who's willing to step up their game and do what it takes to be qualified enough can find a job in the Silicon Valley. But you have to be able to be adaptable. You have to, you know, leave a lot of the gruffness behind. You know, you have to be able to learn to speak, you know, the language of tech, rather than, you know, Roger this, Roger that, you know, whatever it might be. You know, you have to learn that. And that's where a lot of people who have been doing the same thing for 20 years, and they've been the top of their game, and they've been the best at what they did, they come to Silicon Valley and they're like, well, I'm the top tier.
Yeah, I'm the pedigree.
Silicon Valley, and the client's like, yeah, bye. I don't want you. You know, I'm uncomfortable around you, you know? And if you're not comfortable, you know, setting your ego aside and saying, guess what? This is not about me. It's about the protectee.
Yep.
If you're not comfortable doing that, you're not going to fit in Silicon Valley, because they have no reason to have you around if you don't accommodate their lifestyle.
Yeah, that's awesome. On one hand, it's like very much what we do. You know what I mean? Like, I'm starting to see these threads, you know, these commonalities, you know, like cultural equity being ridiculously important. No matter where you're working and what your culture is, that trash will keep you alive. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could be MacGyver, you could be, you know, the Navy SEAList of the, Delta Forces of the combat blue ribbon having, but if you can't gain any cultural equity in that environment, you're going to die. It is a matter of time. You're not getting paid. You're just not.
You will starve. No,
yeah, you'll starve. Exactly.
Exactly. And being able to absorb the culture without changing who you are, like we were talking about at the beginning, you need to be you.
This is true.
But at the same time, all of us have rough edges that we can work on chipping at, right? There's always improvement that can be done if we're mentally in the game enough to focus on what we can do, Yeah. You're not going to change who you are. You shouldn't change who you are, because you're just going to fake it.
That's false. Don't do that. It's going to be disgusting.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
But be your version. Use the right tackle. Use the right bait. Use the right ghillie suit. Put the right stuff on, Play the game. Get good at the game. Win the game. Come on. Yeah.
100%.
This is what I think. It's just intelligence. It's just social intelligence. Don't be false. But do your version, and people appreciate it when they see you trying to value, no matter what culture it is. They see you try to use their language, try to respect their culture, and things like this. It does nothing but help you gain rapport, even if you do it wrong. Sometimes you're not chauvinistic about it.
Right, 100%.
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
We are a direct representation of the people we're protecting.
This is true.
And that is something that, while you say it in EP school and we think about it on occasion, the people see you enter the room with your protectee. If you're representing a different value set or, image or something other than what it is that the principal is trying to communicate in that meeting, then you become a distraction rather than an asset to what the principal's trying to do. Yeah. So that's something to think about. It's a mohawk may be appropriate in Hollywood, but is it necessarily appropriate in the corporate boardroom? I would argue in some cases that it is, but understanding why it is, why it isn't, what behaviors are acceptable, are not acceptable is clutch.
Yeah, that's awesome. Social dynamics. That's good. That's a good little taste. It's a good little taste, man. It's like the Mecca, corporate culture. Figure it out. Don't go down there thinking you're the business. And really, you just, in this game, you got to keep the cup half full, man. Because if that cup's full, you can't put nothing in it. That's how I like to say it, What would you say about education?
So education for me has been a double-edged sword. Like I mentioned earlier, I quit school when I was 13. And that was out of necessity to work and, pursue my goals at the time.
A real education. I'm just messing around.
I did, right? Quite literally,
Yeah, I know, right?
At 13, my education was so limited.
Life,
right? And so I lived the school of hard knocks for many years, but I had a client in Philly who said, "Caleb, I like you, but you need to get an education."
Okay.
And
here we go.
I took those words to heart. And the other thing he challenged me with was, to have a 5-year plan. And he asked me what my 5-year plan was. And I said, well, my 5-year plan is to be an EP. And he's like, well, you're an EP. And I was like, oh, I made it.
I have to come.
Made me realize, exactly. Right. But that made me realize that success today is not necessarily what success is going to look like tomorrow. And the different seasons in my life in the protection industry have evolved drastically in some cases. But education has been a perfect example of that evolution, because I started up schooling when I was 29 and I haven't stopped since. I have two classes left to finish up my master's. And
congrats.
Thank you. Finding that education, pursuing that education, figuring out how to pay for that education has been challenging.
As a civilian.
Out of my own pocket, paying as I've gone, with, help from clients here and there, thankfully in some cases.
Yeah, you can justify
it. Yep. But by and large, coming out of my own pocket, has been a significant investment of time and resources, and over the years, it'll be, I've kept track, on an Excel spreadsheet of the training that I've paid for over the years. And I'm right at $193,000 in security specific training over the years, since I first worked security type of deal, and man, nobody paid for me. Nobody, took and said, you need to go to these schools. It was a constant progression of training to be able to be the professional that I wanted to be. Oh, it was a grind. At some points I put 100% of my earnings into training so that I could, make it to the next step. I left ESI with $43 in my pocket. I didn't even know how I was going to get gas to get home.
So what would you say was the fruit of this learning, this educational endeavor? How have you seen it? So if someone's listening and they're like, yo, this dude's almost dropped $2,000 into his education, how do you validate that expense?
So there's a couple different ways you can validate it.
Yeah, man.
I think just becoming the professional that I wanted to be has been how I validated it, right? Yeah. My goal when I was 30, I made the decision that I wanted to pursue the steps that I could take to be a chief security officer of a Fortune 50 company by the time I was 50 years old. And we've gone over my background. I don't have one, right? You look at what I did when I was 30 was I looked at LinkedIn profiles of all of the Fortune 50 CSOs. And I saw, military, law enforcement, and a whole ton of education on there, right? And so I made the decision to start pursuing everything that I could. Obviously, I'm not going to have a federal background, right? I'm too old. Yeah. But I can pursue other points on their resumes and develop myself as a professional to try and glean and learn what they've learned throughout the years. And so I literally took those top 50 CSOs and I used that as my template for my path forward. I'm 9.5 years later and I'm still pursuing it. I'm still learning. I'm learning from my current CSO in every way that I possibly can, taking and absorbing that into my lifestyle has been transformational for me.
Transformational. So yeah, man, I love it. Cause The Rock said it. I'm sorry. I'm just such a bro. Sometimes I'm just such a knuckle dragger grunt sometimes. But I was in the gym the other day and I was listening to Dwayne Wade. And he was like, and then he got it from one of his other buddies. But anyways, the quote is perspective dictates performance. You know what I mean? Like, we make our lives by the decisions we make. You want to make higher quality decisions, you got to get higher quality information. Now with the information age, you got no excuse. You know what I mean? But, I feel the same way about education, that it's like the cornerstone that shapes the lens through which we demonstrate our value and by which we make decisions. And, the value you get from being able to educate yourself in this journey you've gone on, it's honestly, in my opinion, it's just it's unquantifiable. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Exactly.
You're in a position of power. You're in a position running things for a high powered detail in the mecca of our industry. You know what I mean? You get a self-confidence that you know what you know. If you're smart, you know what you don't know. But you know what you know. You know what I mean?
And I think that knowing what you don't know, I think is key, because the more I learn, the more I realize. The less I know.
Yeah, right? Man. And that's the truth.
And when I'm in a room with the top decision makers in the world, I'm not in the room because of my brain, right? I'm there because I have a specific duty to protect, right?
Specialist. Yeah.
In my head, I'm still that ghetto little kid from Washington State, right?
I'm right behind you, bro.
Right? And in my mind, all I'm trying to do is learn and absorb so that I can represent the principal well, right?
Yeah.
And without, the more education I get, the more I realize that it's not about me, right? All that information is doing is helping me understand how to better facilitate the needs and the lifestyle of the principal. And knowing what is taught at top schools is what is allowing me to better understand what the principal's expectations are and the context behind everything that they do. And that's really the biggest value that education has brought to me. I mean, the different schools that I've attended have provided completely different ends of the spectrum. The International Security Graduate Program really drilled down on the policy development and, quantitative and qualitative differences in decision-making processes. When I first started the program, I didn't know the difference between quantitative and qualitative. I literally Googled it.
Hey, and there's no shame in that.
Right? Learning, right? But understanding those differences and how to implement it in the decision-making process, in the policy process, really helped me contextualize what it was that the principal was trying to do so that I could better adapt my performance based on that, right?
Yeah.
Master's program I'm in currently is amazing, just deep knowledge of the international stage and different cultures and, the different, governments and the way, security impacts different governments. And so it's really, especially this year to where it's been nonstop, international travel, really helped me understand the key elements and context from even other government officials as, we've met with them and seen them and whatnot. So it's been an amazing process. Most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. Take a non-academic and put them in an academic environment. I spent 60 hours on one final, didn't sleep a wink, just stayed up and 3 workouts all the way through it,
Yeah, use your tools, man. No, I'm right there with you, bro. I'm always the last guy leaving the class with the last guy taking the test. I just, and for me, when I got out of the military, I got like free ride. You know what I'm saying? Because I did the military thing. But
that's not a free ride. You earned that, brother.
Thank you. That's true. But man, I've just finished my master's and I last month, and I'm like, for me, it's just this little victory of I always was scared of school. Dude, I went to the Marine Corps because I was like, I ain't doing this no more. I got to get out of here. I will fight in that war in Iraq before I will do any more school. And for me, it was like a huge psychological thing, and then killing the things that I fear. And I still read slow, bro. I barely make it through the captions at the bottom of the movie. You know what I'm saying? and numbers and letters still, so, no, I totally feel you on that. But man, there's just so much to say for the guy that doesn't give up, man. Everyone hears it. They hear it all the time and and no one really takes it seriously. But when you someone looks at you, they're like, man, he's a successful, high-powered dude made it in the private security industry. But you said it. You're like, I'm just a little ghetto boy from Washington. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
I'm right there with you, dude. I grew up in Washington, too, but I'm just a little dude. I was a little fat kid in Washington. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know how I'm going to make it. The only thing I feel like guys like us have done right is I've been mediocre enough to know I got to work really hard to get good results. And I just kept on freaking going. You know what I mean? If I've gotten anywhere, that's how I freaking got there, So
exactly. And one of the professors during one of the graduate programs said something that has stuck with me and pretty much transformed my team that I was managing at the time. And that was fail often to succeed sooner.
Yeah, man, that's good.
I've taken that to heart because I no longer look at failure as a bad thing, right? I've gone around with people on this, especially in the EP community. With failure, where you can't fail. You can't fail because if you fail, it reflects bad on the principle. But I'd rather have 1,000 small failures that I learn from, that I grow from, that I develop from, than breezing through everything and not having those failures and then having a big failure that really
catastrophic meltdown.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And if we're not constantly learning, if we're not constantly pushing the envelope, if we're not constantly looking at, what the boundaries of possibilities are, then A, we're not going to innovate as EP practitioners. B, we're not going to stay relevant because guess what? The industry is moving forward, whether or not we move forward with it or not.
Right.
And C, everybody is going to see that you are becoming a dinosaur incrementally.
Yeah. And they're going to see the writing on the wall.
Exactly. Exactly. And having the mentors that have kicked me when I needed it the most has been the difference between success and failure for me, because I have 3 mentors that have been brutally honest, that have raked me over the coals at times with the areas that I needed to improve in, and a difficult process for sure. But those failures, learning from them and absorbing the solutions from those, my heroes in the industry, is what really has allowed me to continue to grow and stay relevant to the industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't have survived without my mentors, man. Like my first detail, I just wouldn't have made it. And I saw a lot of guys not make it. If I wasn't humble enough to be like, what's really going on here? Man, mentorship, I believe, is real important in this game. It's real important in this game.
It's talked about so much, but oftentimes in EP specifically, our egos become so catastrophically huge because you're standing next to the principal, right? You're standing next to the important gal or guy, and you're like, I'm important. I'm next to them, and so your ego just right, and that client, contact high that happens to so many people. It happens to so many people in the industry, and you see it. And unless we're able to take and recognize that, guess what? I'm still that ghetto little kid from Spokane.
Right.
I have to keep it real. I have to keep it real. I have to learn. I have to be real with myself so that I can do what it is that I need to do, rather than try to focus on, the fluff that enters our head when you're around those amazingly smart people.
The phantoms, you know what I'm saying? You start thinking their success is your success. Oh, it's horrible.
Exactly.
I dig it. And it can happen. And if you're a normal person, I mean, it's seductive, but that's what's up, man. Last question until we get into our closing questions. What would you say about the transition from a field agent into leadership?
I would say it's the most underestimated transition in the industry. Our industry as a whole is so young that there's not the formal controls in our industry that you see in, military, law enforcement. You don't see, the federal government. All 3 of those have formal, transition processes for, becoming an officer, learning how to manage, learning how to lead, learning how to delegate, all those transitions. I went from being an excellent agent that was well-respected, well-liked, to being a horrific manager who was hated and suffered complete catastrophic failure. It was the worst time of my life, and it was all because I tried to manage like I followed. And without those 3 principles that we talked about, that development phase to where I was forced, my CSO brought me into the office and he said, Caleb, you have 30 days to fix it. Either we're going to give you a severance plan and you're gone, or you have 30 days to fix it. And don't kid yourself. Nobody fixes it in 30 days. And I said, hey, I'm not a quitter, right? I realize that I'll probably lose my job in 30 days. I realize that I probably will walk away without a severance package, but I am going to do everything that I can to systematically fix my deficiencies. And that was a transformational period because I started with a leadership coach. I started with my mentors, meeting with them on a regular basis. And thankfully, my CSO at the time really took, and he was one of my mentors, but he took and he gave me the tools that I needed to correct the deficiencies. He introduced me to my mentors and, gave me that fuel I needed to thrust me into a position to where I could actually become, an improving leader rather than the failing leader that I was during those years. And so I think I see it time and time again in the industry. And not only is that the reason why many details are lost from a vendor perspective, but from a client's perspective, that's been, in many cases, my biggest frustration with different vendors is there's not continuity in leadership. There is not a succession plan that allows for aspiring agents who are at the top of their game in the EP field to become a manager, to become a leader, to become a director, to move up that food chain and actually learn the different skill sets, that are required to learn. And having a leadership coach was huge, because it was an hour every week that was spent grilling me on what I did, how I approached challenges, how I approached personnel issues and different people, and really learning how to lead as a leader and be the leader that I wanted to be, but I was far from being proficient at.
Man, that's huge. Because you just think if you're like a solid dude out in the field, of course you're going to be a solid leader. Like, of course, like you almost take it for granted. I had no clue. But it's not always the case, man. That is very true. And we'll send them off to squad leaders course. We'll send them off to corporals course. We'll send them off to these, different schools that kind of instill these leadership principles and like transition your strengths as a good field guy, and then teach you this new kind of way of being. This is very interesting. It's very true. I can see some of it right now out in a few different areas that I am in the world. And I'm like,
right?
This is good, man.
And it really boils back down to the three principles that guide me, because at whatever level you're at, allowing those three principles to dictate your actions can help us be successful, because it works for an agent, it works for a leader, it works for a client,
I find it so interesting how similar leadership and following really are. You know what I mean? Like I'm finding that like as a leader, you're like serving, as someone who's following your leader, you're serving, and you're kind of leading from the front. You're leading from the front lines, let them know what you see. You're trying to make their job as easy as possible. As a leader, you're trying to protect your leader, and as a leader, you're trying to protect your followers. You're serving them. I mean, it's like this interesting yin yang, like dualistic, night implies day, life implies death kind of thing. It's very interesting. That's gnarly, man. The best leaders are servant leaders. It's this whole thing, man. That's what's up. Let's see here. Favorite quote or mantra, if you have one, or saying. We hit some good ones already today, actually. But
yeah, I mean, by far, fail often, succeed sooner is, on every wall in my mind.
Heck yeah.
It really is, something that has shaped my life.
Awesome. No, that's a good one. That might even be the title for this. I like it. How would you want the industry to remember you? If there's one, like how they say your name, what would you like them to say afterwards? He was a
guy that grew up with the industry, was taught by the industry, and did his best to move the industry forward.
Boom. I love that, man. That's good to go. That's what's up, man. Awesome, man. Well, dude, it's been really good talking with you. It's been awesome, being able to share this stuff. This is so much like high quality information here, man. And I know people will pick up what's relevant to them based on where they are in their journey in the EP game.
Definitely.
But I feel like this is one that people can come back to and really listen to at different stages as they progress, and they'll see different things like, yo, I'm dealing with that right now, or that could help me, What are you up to these days, man? Where can people find you, Caleb?
All the normal places,
LinkedIn.
I'm not a big social media guy, just because I'm actively involved in ops, and I'm a client. I'm not trying to sell a product. I'm trying to provide a service type of deal. But I'm there. Love to connect to everybody. My email, if anybody wants to reach out, is epcaleb@gmail.com. About as straightforward as you can get.
Awesome, man.
Always happy to help. Anybody has any question on schools, or which schools are more conducive to the EP lifestyle, I'm happy to give my opinions on that for whatever it's worth. I started at the top, tried to find the best security specific school that I could, and applied, and was ready to work my way down. And thankfully, for some reason, they accepted me. But it's that's what it's all about. As soon as I finish up my master's, then I'm gonna burn all my diplomas and never talk about school again.
I'm right there with you, bro. I'm right there with you. Done. I did it.
Right?
All you need to know. It happened. Thank you. Now will you listen to me? You know what I mean? Like, am I smart enough now for you to listen to me?
Exactly.
Oh, man. That's what's up. Heck yeah, dude. Well, it's been awesome, man. Thanks so much for spending this time with me, Caleb. I really appreciate you, bro. And all your
Thanks so much for having me on. True honor.
Thanks, man. I look forward to hopefully seeing you at the Close Protection Conference if you're in town.
Yes.
If you have the space for it.
Yes, definitely. That's the annual event. Must see, must attend for sure.
Heck yeah, brother. All right then, brother. I'll see you out there. Thanks for listening,
All
y'all.
right. Take care.
Later.
Boom. And to support this podcast, go to executiveprotectionlifestyle.com and contribute to our Patreon account. That Patreon account is what helps me make this podcast possible, contributing to this brand, what we're doing here, making it so that I can bring better guests on, making it so that we can plan more events and just expand the contribution to the private security industry, and also to making America a safer place by teaching people how to protect themselves and the mindset behind that, the lifestyle behind that. You guys are already killing it. $1 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month, whatever you can do that you know you would probably just lose in the mattress anyway or spend on McDonald's. Hey, you want to put it towards something that's going to good use, put it towards a podcast, and get involved in our Patreon account at executiveprotectionlifestyle.com. And if you want to find me, that's ByronRodgersMotivation.com. Do whatever you can, contribute whatever you can to that Patreon account, because it makes all of these things possible, ladies and gentlemen. So much love. Thank you, and thank you for making those contributions. You guys rock. We're already doing amazing there, and it's just because of you guys. So thanks once again for those contributions. Boom. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode of Executive Protection Lifestyle Podcast. This whole entire thing actually just started off as a Facebook group that blew up and is one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing, executive protection Facebook group online. So if you haven't joined the Facebook group, join the Facebook group. Follow us on Instagram and check us out at executiveprotectionlifestyle.com. If you want to find me, that's ByronRodgersMotivation.com, and I'm on all the social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook as well. So until the next podcast, y'all, stay sharp out there. And as I say it, one mind, many weapons. Talk soon. Out.